That's fine. You have 5 minutes to make your presentation, followed up by up to 5 minutes of questions and or comments. And Tamara, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to this committee. My name is Tamara Taggart, and I'm joining you from the unceded ancestral territory of the Coast Salish peoples, specifically the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations. I'm the volunteer president of Down Syndrome BC. Our society is a nonprofit organization working to share information that supports the health and well-being of individuals with Down syndrome. As a mother to a child with Down syndrome, my son Beckett is almost 16, and as an advocate, I can tell you there's a lot of work to be done to ensure that children with Down syndrome in this province have equitable opportunities to thrive and receive the support they deserve. Access to services is often limited, and any available public supports have lengthy wait lists and offer infrequent and sometimes inexperienced services. Existing direct funding programs unfairly exclude most children with Down syndrome. And as you know, the lack of timely access to critical interventions, therapies, and educational supports can have profound implications for any child's development and long-term outcomes. This is especially true for a child with Down syndrome. We need individualized funding for children with Down syndrome now. Individualized funding places the power and decision-making in the hands of those who know the child best, their family. By granting families the autonomy to choose the supports and services that are most beneficial for their child, we honor their expertise and promote a system that truly prioritizes personalized care. We can't expect a one-size-fits-all approach to meet the diverse needs of all disabled children. Down syndrome is a relatively rare diagnosis, and without specific incentive for specialists to become experts in Down syndrome, our kids are at risk of being an afterthought in a system that caters to much higher incidence diagnoses such as autism and FASD. While every child with Down syndrome is unique, there are some very common characteristics such as low muscle tone, which results in developmental delays and feeding and speech difficulties. The genetic diagnosis itself, that extra chromosome, should make every child with Down syndrome eligible for supportive funding and services. We completed a survey last year regarding access to services and support, and the report highlights some alarming challenges. More than 1/3 of respondents had to wait over 3 months to access speech and occupational therapy, and 83% of parents report that public services are just too infrequent. Many caregivers perceive the quality of public services as adequate or poor. Only 36% of children with Down syndrome are eligible for at least one direct funding program, meaning most children are without support. The good news is that for those families that had access to these funding programs or could afford to pay out of pocket, their perceived quality of services was very high. Accessing these important services presents a significant financial impact to families. Most caregivers report using personal funds, and many had to increase their work hours to afford private therapies for their child. If more government funding became available, an overwhelming 84% of caregivers expressed their immediate intention to pursue additional services for their child. This shows the immense demand and the urgent need to prioritize funding for children with Down syndrome. Our families have been left out for far too long, and I can't help but wonder why. DSBC recently published the results of a survey of BC caregivers who received a Down syndrome diagnosis in the last 5 years. Nearly all respondents felt pressured to undergo further testing once Down syndrome was suspected, but only 38% said they felt fully informed about the risks and benefits of doing additional testing. When they received the diagnosis of Down syndrome, more than half felt immediate pressure to terminate their pregnancy. Between the persistent lack of support services and funding, combined with the pressure to test with or without informed consent, followed by immediate and persistent pressure to terminate, I can't help but think if maybe the solution our government is pursuing is simply the elimination of persons with Down syndrome from our society. And if so, it's appalling. We are advocating for a future where children with Down syndrome in British Columbia are welcome members of our communities and have equitable access to quality services, funding, and comprehensive support systems. Together, we can ensure that our children receive the opportunities they deserve to thrive, grow, and participate meaningfully in our society. We recommend each child who has a genetic diagnosis of Down syndrome receive individualized funding in the amount of $25,000 per year. Thank you for your time.
Tamara, thank you for your presentation this morning. Questions from the committee?